Hey friends, 1.5 years ago I was invited by Mr. Tommy Emmanuel to be his special guest at his concert here at the Fabrik in Hamburg. And one thing he said at the soundcheck resonated with me. He said, if you want to have a big crowd, have a big sound. But what is a big sound? And is that really the only thing you should be looking for? Creating a big sound is much more than just turning up the volume on the mixer, and when it comes to finding the sound that fits your playing, there are actually quite many things to bear in mind, not only regarding your live sound, but also regarding recording and simply playing at home. This will not be a nerdy gear video, but more about general thoughts I have regarding finding your sound on the acoustic guitar, especially when playing in a live setting. Let's get started. The history of guitar music started a couple of centuries ago, and over time the music shaped the way guitars were built and vice versa. The possibilities of amplification and sound effects created new ways guitars could sound, and many of these colors became characteristic for certain genres. Today we have more possibilities than ever, and musicians are more creative than ever, blending genres, looking for their own sound instead of just following the tradition. Which means there's no such thing as a generally good guitar sound, because it heavily depends on what music you play, in which kind of venue you play, and which sound transports the vibe and the emotions you want to create in the most effective way. If you are a classical guitar player who interprets music from the Baroque, classical or Romantic era, you might have spent time researching what kind of instruments were used at that time and which guitars that are available today come close to how instruments sounded at the time that music was created and performed. However, if you come more from a fingerstyle background or compose your own music like myself, the approach to instruments might be a completely different one. I personally write music with the approach of a one-man band. When I compose, I try to find inspiration in all kinds of styles, and mostly pieces are not inspired by other guitar pieces, but piano music, string quartets, orchestras, funk bands, etc. But often I have the feeling all those inspirations don't really come across if sound-wise I just stick to the traditional acoustic guitar sound. It is quite a dilemma. You write music for the acoustic guitar but can't express what you hear and feel using just the instrument alone, because the inspiration can be located in a very different soundscape. For me, the only solution is making amplification a part of your instrument. So what are the possibilities you gain through amplification? First of all, you can change the sound of the instrument with effects and add more sound colors to your repertoire. These don't have to be very noticeable effects, like for example a wah-wah pedal, but can also be very subtle ones. I, for example, use EQs, and I'm mostly playing with PA systems that include subwoofers, just to add a bit of sub-bass to the guitar that the acoustic sound of the guitar doesn't really have, but that adds a subtle layer I just hear in my music and makes the guitar sound, to speak with Tommy Emmanuel's words, bigger. This isn't something I would call better in general, because it's something you probably wouldn't do if you play with a bass player, because those sounds would be in each other's way, or it wouldn't fit if you play more traditional and classically inspired music. But it feels just right with my own music and my own taste. I also carry 2 reverb pedals with me, so I can basically change the size and feel of the room depending on what kind of song I play. And of course, there are thousands of other options to use effects on your guitar sound, which is too much to talk about for this video. Possibility number 2, you extend the range of dynamics of your instruments with amplification. On the one hand, you can play much louder than acoustically, but on the other hand, you can play just as quiet as acoustically. So if your music is sometimes inspired by bands or orchestras which simply have a much bigger dynamic range than one acoustic guitar, it makes a lot of sense to make use of that. Possibility number 3, if the sound is not just coming from the guitar's sound hole, but also from different speakers in the room, it's much easier to fill every corner of the room with sound. This is not just about volume, but it makes the sound again bigger. It is almost like creating the impression of an orchestra which fills the whole stage with sound coming not only from the center. Because I like exactly that, it often isn't a good solution for me to play a concert with just a guitar amp standing next to me. because it just makes the sound a little bit louder, but doesn't have the same effect of filling the room with sound from different places. And if you want to use stereo effects, you of course also need speakers on each side. But where do you even start if you want to use amplification to your advantage and make it a part of your music and your instrument? Let me tell you right now, probably you will get yourself into a never-ending journey. First of all, it is about trying out different instruments, different pickups, different effect pedals, different preamps, different DIs, and finding a combination that creates a sound you enjoy. I played almost 1,000 concerts now, and over time my way of playing changed, new equipment became available on the market, and also my taste changed a bit. Often I had the feeling I was reaching something you could call my sound, but I still find myself working on it, always with the input of luthiers, fellow musicians or sound engineers. For me, it's more about every now and then looking for a little better sounding or more practical solution, instead of finding one final solution and then never change it again. However, here are some things I learned on the way. If a guitar sounds great acoustically, it still might not work well amplified. Actually, I have to admit, I'm not really interested in guitars that sound wonderful acoustically. Of course, it's great to play a beautifully built guitar at home, which sounds inspiring without the need of amplification. But since I'm always writing pieces I aim to play on stage, and with the additional possibilities of amplification in mind, I'm actually much more interested in the whole picture. To me, classical or acoustic guitars without pickups feel like different instruments that have more limits for playing and composing, at least outside of the classical world. When I was looking for my first proper nylon string stage guitar, it took me ages to find one I really liked because, and it might sound funny, most of the ones I tried were too good, which means they sounded nice acoustically, but often they were too alive when you amplified them on stage and caused feedback issues, couldn't really be used for percussion. Basically, they were amazingly built instruments which lost their magic when plugging them into a PA because they simply were too hard to handle. Often I receive messages from people asking what is the best pickup. And the second thing I learned exploring the world of amplifying acoustic guitars is that this question is almost impossible to answer because it depends so much on your taste, your music, and your instrument. Even in my two Kobler nylon string guitars, which are basically the same model, I used different pickups because the guitars react a bit differently, and my favorite pickup for one guitar wasn't really my favorite for the other. And actually, I also enjoy that they don't sound the same. A strategy that works for me is using a piezo pickup for the bass frequencies and some low mids, and a microphone for mids and high frequencies. I EQ both signals a lot on my board and blend them both with my 2-channel preamp. Still, I'm continuing to experiment with different pickups, and there definitely is not the one perfect solution for me yet. Right now, I enjoy piezo pickups by Carlos Juan or Alarbex for my nylon string and the Alarbex Anthem for my steel strings, but maybe with your guitars or your way of playing other pickups work better. So I guess there's no way around comparing different options yourself. Another thing I realized over the years, it's important to let pickups be installed by a professional who is experienced in amplification. If a pickup is installed and there is sound, it doesn't automatically mean the pickup works to its full potential. And it really needs an experienced luthier to notice that in the first place, and then get the best sound quality out of your pickup system. The third thing I learned, if you found a guitar pickup preamp combination that works very well for you, it doesn't mean it sounds the same on every PA system. Two things are helpful here. If you play in a live setting and there is a sound engineer, it's important to be able to communicate which kind of sound you're looking for. Often enough, it happened that I added the extra bass, for example, and prepared my preferred sound on my board, and the engineer eliminated that extra bass again and made it sound like the perfectly natural sound of the guitar, but louder. Because how could he or she know I was looking for something different? Here, it's not enough to say that this is not what you want, but you should actually know what you want and be able to communicate that, maybe even naming specific frequencies that need to be taken up or down. It's important to work as a team and speak the same language here. And if you're not working together with a sound engineer, it's very important to have the option of adjusting the sound on your pedal board yourself. Get yourself at least a proper EQ pedal and also take your time learning about which frequencies have which effect on your sound. I think this is as important as practicing your playing technique, because it doesn't help if you have a great tone in your right hand, but don't know which frequency it is that makes the guitar sound bad on that specific PA you are using, and you need to adjust. And even if you practice and prepare all that, you will not have the same sound quality at every concert. Every PA and every room is different, and you will rarely reach the exact sound you have prepared at home with your own acoustic amp or PA, but you can do your part to come as close as possible to the sound you want. However, I also think a musician should be able to play a good show with a sound that's just 90% as good as they want it. When I played that concert with Tommy Emmanuel in November 2022, it was by far the loudest performance I have ever played. Not only did I have to fill a much bigger room with my sound than most of the time, but also for a duet I had to keep up with Tommy, who simply plays very loud concerts. And as somebody who usually looks for a rather warm and soft sound, I actually needed to EQ my guitar a bit different there to also get my sound across to everyone in the back of the room at that volume. In order to get my guitar loud enough, it had to sound more direct, and I used more of the sharper high-mid frequencies, which I would usually take out when I play in a smaller setting. So there in the big hall with a loud PA, I basically felt like I have to make my guitar sound a little bit worse, or at least a bit different than what I usually do, to make sure it sounds good for everyone and not just like a cloud of bass and mid frequencies where you couldn't even separate notes if you would listen from the back of the room. That evening was quite a lesson about each room having different acoustics, different vibes, and different stage volumes requiring different adjustments. And even after 1,000 concerts, I'm still learning about getting the best sound I can in every room I play in. If at some point soon I decide to take somebody with me on tour, it actually has to be a sound engineer, because making a guitar sound great is a much bigger challenge than some people think. But when you are on a stage and the sound is just right, it's so worth it and such a good feeling. Since my main guitar made by Christina Kobler is one of the rare instruments I found that work very well amplified, but still have quite a nice acoustic sound, I use the same instrument for studio recordings, which I approach a bit differently. There, the acoustic sound of the guitar, picked up by several microphones in the front, is the biggest part of the sound, while on stage you sometimes don't even really hear the acoustic sound anymore. I try to get the recording still sound as big as I like it, but it isn't anymore about the sound having to fill a big room. I always get the microphones I use very close, and I like the recording being mixed in a way that also sounds like I might just sit in the same room playing right next to you. It's of course a matter of taste, but I like to not overproduce the albums and videos, but rather look for a variation of that round and warm sound I use on stage that is a little more intimate and closer at the same time. Talking about recording the guitar would of course be an extra video, and I still have so many thoughts about the topic of amplification as well, but for now I stop here and I rather make a follow-up video at some point soon. Maybe this answers a few questions already if you're looking into amplifying your acoustic or your classical guitar. I'm currently planning my new pedalboard and stage setup, so if you're interested, I might be able to make a really nerdy video after summer where I take you through my equipment either here on YouTube or on my TrueFire channel. Let me know in the comments if that's something you would be interested in. Now that I collected all those thoughts and experiences about amplification and live sound in this video, it isn't easy to say what the conclusion would be. I guess for me there are three main points. First, there is no such thing as the one perfect guitar sound that enhances every style of music. Second, amplification is not just about making the guitar louder, but if you take your time exploring it, it can become a crucial part of your sound on the instrument and even your way of writing music. Be creative with it and find a sound that works for you. And number three, learn about frequencies and the basics of how amplification works, so you can actually try to recreate the sound you made at home on every stage with every half-decent PA system. Now I have to go back into preparing my last concert before a little summer break. So over the coming weeks, there will actually be enough time working on the sound and improving the setup once again. And also I'm preparing the release of the next single of the upcoming album with Bjarke Fellgren called The Circle, which will be out on August the 23rd, 2024. So as always, there is a lot happening over here. If you want to stay up to date about the new album, but also about my tour dates, please check my website or add your name to my email list, which also works via my website if you scroll all the way down. And if you want to see all the upcoming videos I will upload to this channel, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week and see you on tour or in the next video.